Hey everyone, welcome to Cloud Masters. I'm your host, Nathan Bordeaux, joined by my co-host, Sam Clark. And today we're talking about AWS OLA, the Optimization and Licensing Assessment, which is essentially a complementary and comprehensive analysis of your current infrastructure that shows you how much you could save by optimizing your licensing and moving to AWS. And so joining me to kind of break this all down are Greg and Satish. They're both senior cloud architects from DoiT, who run many of these assessments and helped companies uncover savings through them. So before we get into more details in what OLA is, let's talk about the pain points a bit. So Greg, what are like the warning signs that a company needs this kind of assessment?
Oh, certainly. The following are common indicators suggesting that a company would benefit from an OLA. So if you have increases in your Windows licensing or your SQL licensing costs, changing licensing terms, complicated licensing terms that come up with your Windows licensing, so they're constantly changing as well. If you're unable to determine the options with your bring your own licenses, or BYOL is what they call it, and cloud storage for achieving cost savings, those would be a good indicator. If you're over provisioned on compute resources for your SQL resources or for your HA or for any of your clusters, that'd be another indicator. If you're always having to go to finance to get more money for storage, that could be a very good indicator that you're not optimizing your storage very well. And then, if you don't have a data lifecycle strategy either, resulting in, cold storage or anything else like that, you could be overcharged for the storage that you're currently paying for. And then also these help you map if you are trying to go to the cloud. This also helps you map those entities to cloud for storage savings in those fronts. But yeah, that would be definitely indicators there.
How exactly does OLA help in any of those circumstances that you just described?
And with the OLA program, we provide a comprehensive, data-driven action itemed assessment that helps identify key areas for optimization. This includes underutilized or misaligned licenses, like my colleague Greg mentioned, and also oversized compute resources, insufficient storage usages, such as outdated snapshots, data stored in a wrong tier, or mapping to optimize AWS storage services. The output is just not data. It's a prioritized, actionable roadmap that helps your team reduce costs and improve performance with a confidence by implementing these into production.
It's an interesting combination. So I mean, optimizing storage is awesome, and optimizing licenses is awesome. It seems like a strange combination for AWS to put these two things together in one program. Is that is there something I'm missing there? Is there more than that?
Well, first of all, let's go ahead and address what OLA even stands for. So we've been using this term and this acronym for a little bit. Let's go ahead and say OLA is actually AWS, as it stands for Optimization and Licensing Assessment. And I think Matan said it, our host here previously. But just to reiterate, it's AWS as Optimization and Licensing Assessment. So this is a complementary engagement funded by AWS. So its purpose, again, is to analyze your Windows, SQL, and storage footprint to identify inefficiencies. So like one of the options is like, do I go VM based versus do I go host based? So these mappings and placements with existing licensing, how does that look? Do I go pay as you go, or do I bring my own licenses, and what does that look like? So these are the things that we help, and this is the things that the OLA will help determine and help you analyze here. So also, like your SQL configurations, SQL is very complicated in its licensing and the way its cores are distributed, and actually the way that failovers are done. So that those can be very challenging to determine what I have and if I'm using them, and then if I'm using them the way I should be using them, or am I paying too much? So these are the other things too in Windows licensing that can affect you. And SQL is one of the big ones in here. So as an example for SQL, a fintech customer actually finished an OLA in about 10 days, and they discovered double licensed SQL clusters. So they were able to cut 60K out of their bill because of that. So these are the things that this can uncover for you too. And yeah, maybe there's savings there you didn't even know that they were there already. So this is what this OLA will help you do. And Satish, I'll let you talk about storage here.
Sure. Thank you. For storage, we examine like idle unattached EBS volumes, snapshots, and infrequent access data in S3, Glacier, IA rules, and lifecycle policies if they are already enabled or not being used. Also, a comprehensive usage patterns like throughput, IOPS, and what is the data age. We also give a classified workload definition by what kind of storage, like a block, file, or object storage through this assessment, and map all these access storages to write AWS services like EBS, FSX, EFS, S3, or any other AWS S3 service that is a right fit, which will save um, not just the cost, but also improves the performance day in, day out, right? Which helps to run the application very smoothly. I can talk about a real-time example where a company which have archived 500 terabytes of dormant EBS backups to Glacier. When we do an instant retrieval, that cost has been reduced by 75% because it hasn't been stored in the right tier. Instead of an S3IA, it was in a Glacier, which cost them a lot more than necessary. So this is how AWS OLA helps at the storage front to optimize the performance and also provide a detailed plan by elevating the inefficiencies in the storage usage.
So I'm really interested to know how we identify what's the right amount of snapshots and all that sort of stuff. But I think we're already planning on talking a little bit about the process overall. So do you want to maybe walk us through that, and I'll save my questions until later on. Maybe
Yeah, I'm gonna ask that too, because like when I think of AWS and their programs, I think of MAP, and I know MAP has set steps with defined things that happen in each step. So I'm wondering if this is similar in that.
Absolutely. Actually, both of you are on the right topic, right? So this whole process typically unfolds in 3 phases. The first phase is a discovery phase. Second phase is analysis and assessment, and the third one is planning and recommendation phase. Right? I'm going to break it down, all these phases. In the discovery phase, we sit down with the customer, gather all the requirements and what is their current pain points and which pathway they want to take during the discovery phase, right? And then in the analysis and the assessment phase, this is where we deploy data collection tools into the customer environment, right? So this can be agent-based or agentless, depending upon their environment and security needs. The data collection typically takes about 7 days. That's a bare minimum we require to collect all the necessary information regarding all the infrastructure that we want to collect the data regarding IOPS, throughput, licensing, how many Windows servers, what are the EBS storages they have aligned to, what are the HA clusters, right? And in the third phase, this is where actually AWS OLA, with the help of these tools, generate the actionable recommendations, right? Which our team will analyze, right? And then provide a final report with a actionable plan that we can take, and then take the actionable items and then work through the process in the AWS environment, right? Which saves again, not just the cost, but also improves the efficiency of the application. I was just talking about one single thing, pathways in the discovery phase. So I just want to just touch base on the pathways, right? So as one of the questions which my host, Sam Clark, asked, should it be EC2 and storage? How are they all combined? It also has a couple other options, right? Which is, one is like this whole comes with a multiple tailored migration pathway, right? Based on the customer's workloads and infrastructures. These pathways include modernizing legacy workloads through optimizing EC2 configurations and licensing, improving storage strategies with cost-effective and scalable AWS storage options, enabling seamless cloud-to-cloud migrations for workloads already in other clouds, right? Which drives into map program, and then manage database services, right? So transforming the database environments by offering optimized licensing solutions. Whichever the pathway of this we choose, we can do one or all of these options depending upon the customer requirement.
And you touched upon agentless versus agent-based analyses. So I- I've spoken in the past on our podcast about a few customer experiences, and I've got lots of examples of people doing the wrong things. And one of those is the company's procedures or plans or requirements for backups and snapshots. And oftentimes they don't match the technical compliance needs. Right? It might say that financial data, you have to keep it for 7 years or whatever those records might be. So I'm interested in a couple of things. And the first one is how we determine what is sort of proliferation of snapshots and backups. And secondly, is it only with the agent-based analyses that we can get in and see what's actually going on the disks? Because quite often with EBS or something, you need to get those agents on the machines to check them out further, or is that something that CloudWatch can do? Or how does that work?
Sure. Regarding the agent-based and the agentless, right? So there are definitely certain limitations of agentless collection tool can gather, right? So to be exact, if it is any licensing requirements and cluster allocations and storage requirements, this need a agent-based tool that actually taps into the infrastructure, gathers all the information, including both licensing and storage, right? Especially with the storage, with the throughput, IOPS, what's the data age, right? So these are the data collection agent has to be a agent-based tool. However, if it is in a pathway of cloud to cloud migration, right? So let's say if we are migrating from one of the clouds to other cloud, this is where we can use agentless tools. And also in some cases in data centers as well, we can use agentless tools just to gather the peripheral infrastructure information, right? As in a first step. This has a very there is a very specific segregation in both when we have to use agent-based tooling and when we have to use a agentless based tooling to be deployed into the infrastructure to collect all the data, as the data collection is the key here for this whole process, because unless our source data isn't true, we can't generate a purposeful, actionable recommendations here. I think this is what drives into our next question on pitfalls. I'd let Matan or Sam look into that.
Just before we jump onto that,
Yeah.
what's the agent? Is it an SSM agent? What does the scanning here?
So there are for storage collections, there are NetApp agents, right? So there is a NetApp Cloud Intelligence, right? So this is an agent that it installs on the infrastructure, which gathers all the information, not just on NetApp, but any storage vendor, right? including cloud-based too.
Yep.
Right. So coming to Windows, there are also AWS tooling that actually it's an AWS proprietary agent-based tool, not like NetApp CI, right? Which gathers the information from your infrastructure.
But it's not part of SSM.
No.
Okay, because SSM has software inventory and so on, so that would have been a nice tie-in. Good opportunity missed, Amazon. Well done.
But by the way, how long does this whole process take?
The whole process takes about 2 to 3 weeks, a week of time to collect the data, right? And then another week to analyze and then plan, and in the analyze and assessment phase, and then planning and recommendation phase. I'm saying, depending upon how complex is the data, the rest of the time would be spent on what recommendations are we going to do and what are we going to implement in it, and depending upon the pathway that the customer chooses, it's going to be the timeline varies, but it typically takes 2 to 3 weeks.
And again, I mentioned MAP earlier. We did an episode on AWS MAP and kind of the pitfalls across the three stages. And some of them are technical, and some of them are more like stakeholder and maybe people like people wrangling oriented and kind of talking to different departments and stuff. So I'm wondering like if with the different stages, if the common mistakes are kind of similar, is it solely technical stuff like you didn't deploy agents correctly, or is it also you didn't get the right people in the room?
So there is with all the pitfalls, it's just not always the technical piece. There is the first cause. Um, it is a human error, right? So there's always that human error piece into the pitfalls of the whole process, and there are very um, they vary from each phase, right? Depending upon in the discovery phase, you can have an incomplete inventory because um, admin hasn't given access or haven't deployed the agent in the right environment, right? And then it can have insufficient data collection. It did not have right permissions, right? So, and then in the analysis and assessment phase, this can be uh, in the including the assessors, whoever assess this data. There is also, if there is a misinterpreting the usage data, is the actual storage that it is being used as should be used it as a frequently access data, or can it be a cold data that can be stored in the storage, or assuming it is a one-to-one migration, should it be migrated from M34 large to another M4X large to M4X large, or can it be optimized, right? So and ignoring the licensing models is another key thing in the analysis and assessment phase. And coming to the planning and recommendation phase, we don't want to just focus only on compute, even though we are just analyzing the compute efficiencies. It is always tied up with all compute performance is also tied up with the storage and other resources around it. And then there's no clear migration path. This is a very key pitfall where we walk into the whole process, but we don't know where to do or where to migrate it or how to migrate it, how to optimize it. And then the very key point is the compliance, right? We always want to have key people on these calls: security, networking, and infrastructure. Of course, with the executive team present on all the summarized planning recommendations. These are the key people that makes decisions, and we should not come short of adding any personnel that makes a right decision in this whole path of AWS OLA.
You need to get almost like a pre-commitment from the right people before starting. It's pretty much like MAP, I think.
Pretty much like every program we've ever spoken about. Without exec buy-in, this ain't going to work, right?
That's if you're not committed to it, right? And committing is okay, but also having the right commitment from the right people is the key. Even
Isn't it?
a slight, even if we are missing, if not adding, let's say, for example, a customer did not add in one of the recent engagements their third-party vendor who manages their licensing, and that costs us the whole 1 week of data collection program, where we were totally deviating from. We were thinking this is a clustered license, but it's not. It's an individually licensed. So having that right people on that call is a very key.
It's incredible how hard it is sometimes to get customers to save money. I mean, you tell an executive, hey, come and join this call and we'll save you 60 grand, which I think was a number you threw out earlier. Now, on some customers, 60,000 a month is maybe not the biggest thing, but that's 700 grand a year, right?
Yep.
And then they're like, I am busy that day. I can't come and join that. Anyway, you spoke there a little bit about the focus areas. You mentioned focusing on compute only is a bit of a failure. What are the main focus areas here? So from what I'm hearing so far, we're focusing mainly on Microsoft licensing, specifically Windows and SQL Server. And we're focusing on storage. Is there something else there, or can you take us a little deeper on those areas?
Sure, yeah, I could take you deeper on the Windows area for Windows licensing. So, in this area in Windows licensing, many organizations they just over license or inefficiently utilize their existing licenses. So we see this commonly with SQL licenses and with the Windows licenses itself. So, for instance, in the SQL licensing, what we see is normally people don't know that you start off with 4 core. You have to start off with 4 core with the licensing, so that's the lowest you could go. But most people license a 4 core for a 2 core server, and so they're losing 2 cores in their licensing. So this is some of the inefficiencies that we look for, and some of the recommendations that we try to make. And these are where these savings can be utilized, and some of these savings are found. So also in the SQL editions, utilizing the right ones for what you need. Some people think they need enterprise when really they just need standard. So right there, there's savings big time for SQL Server. And SQL Server licensing is not inexpensive by any means. So whatever you could save in a license cost is definitely going to be substantial. So also in Windows licensing, with the bring your own licensing, for example, I always thought there's things in AWS called dedicated hosts, and they're very expensive to run. So they're basically bare metal almost, and it's almost like running in your own data center itself. But these are where you can bring some of your license to for Windows licensing. And I always thought this would be way out of scope and so costly, no one would do it. But in one of our analysis that we did as an exercise, sure enough, dedicated hosts were cheaper than running the pay-as-you-go from AWS's. So this is the things that we discover and find out. And sometimes when we go through an analysis, we discover things too that surprises us. Like, wow, that's really cool. So this is where also we can find discoveries and find things in our analysis that uncover things that you may not notice as just looking at the surface. So another example, a biotech firm used SQL Web Edition for commercial workloads. So post OLA, they adjusted licensing, became compliant, and saved 33% into this doing this. So this is another area where we're talking about the licensing and the additions and how everything else. So it's a very complicated topic of very many moving parts. So it helps to go through this analysis, and it's very painless too. So this is the other part, like it's just a kind of a no-brainer. It's really painless to do, and it really finds these efficiencies and really helps you out. But yeah, that's what I'd say for the Windows and going deep diving into what this entails and what you can really achieve from this. And it's really painful to do it yourself. So I definitely, it's definitely good to partner up with somebody to do this.
It sounds like I was just thinking like this doesn't sound like I don't know, the hacker in the old James Bond movie hacking through a system and making or like making a change that's overly technical. It sounds to me just a matter of selecting the right options from different drop downs
It,
and like
it is,
things like that.
but there's a lot of understanding required, and this is a really frustrating piece of this. And maybe it's by
Right.
design from Microsoft to get more money out of people. I don't know, but um, before I worked in the cloud, I worked on Windows servers, doing Citrixy stuff, and the licensing when virtual machines first became a real thing, and it started being used in production, was just a nightmare. There was when you've got hyperthreading turned on versus when you've got it turned off, how many cores does that count for? And then cloud makes that even more difficult because you can't affect those things. And some servers do have hyperthreading on and some don't. Some chipsets, I should say. And so it does actually get really confusing to try and figure out what's the correct option to take for these. And exactly as Greg mentioned, the actually, I think it's down to a Microsoft licensing requirement for certain operating systems. You must use dedicated or there's another one besides designated. There's other types of hosts as well. But it gets really confusing, and it's the sort of thing that you just do it once when you're building a system. You don't commit to memory and you move on, right? But then Microsoft changes it sometime, or AWS, or someone changes it, and then you have to go, oh, hang on, why are we running, Windows Data Center Edition instead of regular Enterprise Server or something, whatever the editions are these days? Because you do have these hassles and licensing costs associated with the number of cores and threads and everything else that are going on with the processors. So I think Greg called it a no-brainer. I think that's a little underselling it. I think it's a no-brainer that you should do the assessment,
Right.
but then you need to bring in someone that understands it all, or a tool, because it can save you a lot of money just making or cost you a lot of money making a stupid mistake, right?
Sam, that's a great indicator there, because honestly, I found out that Microsoft now has a license for passive failover for SQL Server. So if you're actually using a SQL Server for passive failover, you don't need to license it. There is a
Right.
license kind of like pass through for that. So most people don't know that. And if you are actually using it for that, you could be over licensing that. And right there, one license could be $17,000. Honestly, that's how much these SQL licenses could go. So you could be saving substantial amount just by doing the SQL exercise and the licensing. So yeah, definitely a good call out for that.
I mean, I don't want to call into the discussion another database provider, but their licensing is getting a bit opaque and starting to look like that, right?
Achoo.
Yeah. Anyways, on the other side of OLA, the what's it called?
Storage.
Kind of a stepbrother. The stepbrother, right? Because you were kind of like, it's kind of a random combination, but storage. Satish or Greg, do you want to take us into kind of what you guys look for typically when it comes to storage?
I can walk you guys through what we typically assess and optimize. What are the optimization techniques that we use in the as a part of AWS OLA program for storage optimization, right? So I think one key thing in before I dwell deep into the storage techniques, we we also want to. There is another key component of both Windows and storage, both with licensing and optimization, which is the hardware licensing. I think we haven't touched that one yet. However, the storage optimization also comes by saving that hardware maintenance, disks failing through, and then licensing the support licensing that we had to renew every 5 years or 3 years, depending upon whatever the model that we key. It 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 aligns both into Windows and storage, and in the storage coming to storage optimization techniques. Um, in the AWS OLA program. These include like an S3 intelligent tiering and lifecycle policies, cold data identification, um, EB2, GP2 to GP3 migrations, snapshot cleanup, and aligning the workloads to the right storage service, like FSX on tap, FSX for Windows file server, or FSX for Lustre, EFS, S3, and EBS, based on, I'm going to say, the selection of which service is necessary. It depends upon what is the purpose of the usage, or what is the requirement of the requirement, what is the use case, what's the performance that is required for the application to use these services, what are the cost factors, and the access patterns, right? So these are the key optimization techniques that we use, are the key optimization areas that we analyze to gather the information and provide these recommendations, right? For an example, right, a gaming company stored all their logs in IO1 volume on EBS, right? And through these OLA, I'm saying the logs are not even, it's not a small set of small sized storage. They are about 700 terabytes. And we moved all these logs for their whole production environment into S3 standard IA, which saved them 9K a month, right? What does this entitle is, by looking at the use case, we know these are logs that needs to be stored for some X amount of time, which are infrequently accessed. They don't have to be on EBS storage. They can be on an IA, standard IA, right? And then slowly, with the lifecycle policies, they can be even migrated onto to a Glacier or any cold storage, right? Which again, upon the top of this 9K a month, down the line, it offers more savings as the timeline progresses, right? So these are some of the key areas, and this is how we analyze the storage optimization used through the AWS OLA program.
And what kind of what savings ranges, I guess, could people expect? Maybe it's total, or maybe if you want to break it down across the server licensing and storage.
Sure. So when we say the numbers the foregoing numbers, these are very in a varied range. The reason is customer environment, maturity level, and the size of their environment influences these numbers. How bad of a situation they are in today, and how much savings could they get through this AWS OLA program, right? So I'm gonna talk on the these numbers are very I don't know loosely scoped, but however these are 30 to 50% savings on the SQL licensing, right? And then just through the Windows licensing, Windows Server licensing, 20 to 70%, and then on the storage you could save up to 30 to 80% depending upon your, as I said, environment, use cases, and then the right sizing. Right. These are just typical figures that do not include the gains that come through this optimization. Right. So we modernize, we optimize, and by following the recommendations, the performance efficiency that comes with it are not included in this saving numbers that I have just mentioned.
So do you mean, Satish, that you should have been a consultant and said it depends? Is that it depends how bad you are?
I don't want to be very political. I'm
No.
a technical guy, so I just want to say bad or how good it is, right?
It's such an impossible thing. Like if someone's done one of these and has perfect SQL licensing set up, they're not going to save more on a SQL licensing, right? If they've understood this, if they are the unicorn out there that has understood Microsoft licensing, then they might not save anything. But obviously, we're not going to pin you to death on one of these.
You're absolutely right. I mean, it depends upon how big your environment is, how small your team might be, right? Even though the people resources is also another key pitfall of all the organizations. They know how to do it. It's just they don't have the time and the resources to get that one down.
Or if they hired someone like me who's still operating on Windows 2008 assumptions, right?
I have worked in scenarios where they still run the legacy systems, and it's for a good reason because they can't. I'm saying just for an example, right? So till today, our the flight planning and all the whole system that we go check in and check out during the flight planning, that whole system still runs on Windows legacy, and that's when I say legacy, that's Windows 90s time. Nobody has changed it because it's not broken, and they don't want to touch it.
I'll try telling that the Southwest.
Yeah.
I was going to make a comment about US Airlines who actually still run on the wartime systems, which are paper and pieces of wood, but they don't use computers. That's genuinely true.
So if you're that, then you can expect maybe the 80% savings on storage.
Well, they wouldn't have any Microsoft licensing. I wouldn't expect for that.
Yeah.
Anyway,
right, and that's what's great. That's what's great about this OLA program too, is that even if you do have a staff that's not heavily booked or, staff that's heavily, funded, this doesn't take a lot of people to run. It doesn't take a lot of, time out of your day, a couple weeks, and you're saving a lot of money. It also is a good idea just to get an assessment of what do I have? I don't even know what I have. Let me see what I have, and let me see what I can do with what I have. Sometimes people don't even know what they have. So this is a good assessment, a good exercise to even go through for even a company that may only have 3 or 4 people in their IT. It's definitely something that we can help.
Can we double click on that quickly? What is the time and money investment required for someone to do this?
Just time, really. I don't think there's really too much investment cost to it, just because it's complimentary service from AWS, and we help run the assessment itself. The time is really what the investment is, and like Satish was saying before, it's a couple weeks. Could be 4 weeks at the most, depending on the size of your environment.
Full time working
no,
4 weeks
no,
just on
no.
this. So
No,
is it 6 meetings? Is it 2?
Oh, I don't know, maybe about 3, 4 at
So
the most. Yeah.
So it's 4 or 5 hours to try and save a
Yeah.
fortune.
I would say so, yeah, because like if it's agent, you're just installing some agents. They're gathering the data. You're not doing this. It's giving the data to us for the assessment, and we do the assessment, and then we bring the assessment to you and say, hey, this is what we found, and this is where you can save, and this is your path forward, which is really good, because then you can go back to finance or to your executive branch and really have numbers and really have quantitative values about how you're saving this money. And you're not just playing guessing games and trying to figure it out on your own. So this is where this OLA program can really benefit you as an organization. So yeah,
Going back to
I
what you said
definitely,
before, it's a bit
yeah,
no-brainer, isn't it?
yeah. I mean, it's very, 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 very easy to go through, very easy to implement. And if you are doing a migration, I strongly recommend it just because it can save you money where you didn't see it, and you don't want to leave money on the table during a
And
migration.
on that note, like how many companies that go through the whole thing actually listen to you or implement the things that you say they should implement? Um, and kind of what separates the good ones, the good kind of experiences for both you and the customer from the bad ones?
Right. I would estimate maybe 50 to 60% take immediate action. The remainder encounter difficulties due to these internal policies sometimes, the absence of a suitable partner. The success factors really, it's executive sponsorship, like we talked about before. Is this something that the executive team or the executive is wanting to do? A lot of times when that gets driven by the executive committee, it does get done. So if that's not the case, that could be a problem. If you don't have the right people involved, that could be definitely an issue. If you don't have a robust FinOps operation or cloud ops type of collaboration going on, that could be a gap for you as well within this success factor of doing this. So with other things too, like the comprehensive discovery of how fast you can deploy the agents in the environment, how fast they can collect the data, so that type of thing, and then the the getting that all set up, I think too is one of those situations to where, depending who owns the infrastructure and who owns that installing of the agent and things like that could take some time on that. Depending on those could be success factors or stop gaps in those. Like, oh well, we can't install it. We don't own the infrastructure. Somebody else owns that, and they do this. So not knowing how your internal team functions is another problem that could present gaps for you as well. So there's different areas like that. Like cost assessment, a holistic cost assessment, you don't really have real numbers. You're just kind of guessing through it. Just like I did with that guessing of the dedicated host. I saw costs on that. I was like, whoa, that's just way out of proportion. But really doing a cost assessment, we found that those to be cost affordable. So trying to do that too could definitely shoot you in the foot. A clear migration roadmap too. If you know what you want to do, if you know your servers, if you know your infrastructure, you want to retire, you know what needs to go over there, that can definitely help out in clearing the migration path for you. Validate your license mobility. Regional constraints and vendor terms, those two can present risks if you don't know those. So these are definitely areas in every business that they would need to know about as well. So any one of these can present an issue of where you could risk the success factor into this.
It sounds like you're the dream company that you'd like to work with would have already kind of internalized this ahead of time going in. So hopefully, we can share this with them ahead of time. And anyone considering an OLA we can just send this over. But just to close things, maybe, and I just, you've been sharing customer stories along the way, but maybe we can talk about something that's more in depth and end to end, like to end things, just a customer story for some company that you've worked with on this.
Right. Yeah. And again, like this other story that I had about the enterprise customer of ours who had the SQL enterprise licensing, we're doing the assessment for them. And this is when we discovered, about the software assurance, how to bring those licenses in. And then during that, we discovered about the primary node only requiring licensing for a true, failover incidents for a passive active type of situation. So this resulted in a huge amount of savings for the customer because they had a number of just SQL servers sitting out there with these H8 clusters in a primary passive type situation, and they were licensing all of them. So we were able to tell them, "Hey, you don't need to do that. This is how this works." And they were like, "Wow, okay, so we can use these other licenses other places where we need SQL." So they were able to reposition those licenses, not lose cost in them, but then more effectively use their licensing in that manner. So this is also, it's not always about cost savings because maybe you already bought those licenses, but how are you using those licenses optimization wise as well too? So that's one of those stories that I like about those because I also like discovering new things for customers that help them out as well. So that's really nice too. 'Cause, that's a lot of the research that it takes time to do, and the customer just doesn't have time to do it. They're trying to run a business. So this is where that OLA can come in and really help out with that too, with that assessment. And Satish, I'll let you talk about storage too. See if you have any good stories for them about that.
Sure. So I have plenty of stories for the storage piece. There are like horrifying stories and really cool ones, right? So when I say horrifying stories, we were talking about how bad the customer environment was running, right? So there were a company which possessed about like an 800 terabytes of cold storage, right? It's on EBS data, right? So why they were using the EBS is a very key question. This is one of the cases that somebody in the past has decided that that's the storage that they want to go with, and then they left it because they did not want to poke the bear, which I was talking in the past, right? So this is through the AWS OLA program. We have identified the storage. We have made sure what's the use case for the data, right? And it is not being used. And should that be on the EBS data? Why can't it be a Glacier or any other as a part of an S3 in the lifecycle managed data? Right? Just by doing all this analysis, they have reduced their storage expenditure by half. Right. Still, you pay the cost of EBS data for 800 terabytes is like it varies way far from the S3 Glacier data costs. It also um, makes the compliance much easy. Like you can encrypt at rest. It would make the compliance. It would make the security of the data, security posture of the data would be increased, and the cost savings are huge, right? So we have seen like a 50% of their cost reduction just by knowing the use case of the data and then migrating them to the right tier of this AWS storage service, right? This implementation, right? This is from discovery to implementation. This whole migration path, how to migrate from EBS to S3, use a data sync agent, what is the whole migration planning, how much cost savings. This is the kind of actionable intel that is the output of the AWS OLA program, right? And take the recommendations and then have a team implement from a day two. Once we complete the assessment, we can just take those actions and then start implementing them to save and to see these cost savings and also performance or security benefits by just doing this, right? So
And this is something. Is it like map where you need to work with a partner to um for this, or is it just kind of something you could go at it alone, but if you could have, you would have done it already, probably, like, or
Uh, so it's not. That's a great question. Actually, can you do by yourself? You have to. There are two ways of getting this done. Right. You can reach out to your AWS account manager. Right. To let them know that we are interested. We want to either as a part of a migration plan or as a part of just to know your environment, as a better assess your environment. Right. We would like to have an AWS OLA assessment, and please provide us with the right people. And AWS, depending upon their resources, they can run your AWS OLA program as a part of your support plan, or partner with a partner like DoiT here, right? To who are certified. I mean, say any partner can't do it. You have a partner who is certified to do a OLA assessment is a key to run the tools, analyze the data, and then understand all the complexities to deliver that final report with actionable items. That's the key. So that's where the Do It shines. We are a AWS OLA accredited assessors, so we can help you to uh, do this assessment of your environment if you choose to, and we are happy to help. Please reach out to our team or your AWS account team to get help on this one and reap the benefits just with your time and it's a complementary program. So why not? Why shouldn't you take it and then know what's in it? If it is a part of if it is your first step in your migration plan, this should be your first stage or first step to take it. This way, you understand your environment, and then you can either streamline your environment in the current infrastructure before migrating, or find the right services to use in the cloud, like AWS cloud, um, uh, to implement your infrastructure to get the benefits in the right way from the day one, right? Rather than getting implemented there and then guessworking, is this a right service? My performance of application is not so great. How can I get it? Do I need to open more support tickets? You would save a lot of time. You would be on the right path by doing this assessment and then integrating into your My program if needed.
Yeah, I would say shameless plug also that we've been doing this kind of stuff that you would normally do in an assessment even before we got the certification too. So it's not like we learned how to do this specifically for the certification. It's just we wanted to get certified. So shameless plug for DoiT. But I think that wraps things up. So thanks to Satish, Greg, Sam, as always, for
Thank you.
the discussion. And for those listening, we'll see you in the next episode. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Have a
everyone.
good one.
Nice one, guys. Cheers.